Bibles, open them up to Romans chapter number 12, and verse number 7 is where we're going to be today. I want to read to you, first of all, a email that I got this week from a class member that I thought would be very encouraging to you. We're in the middle of a study called The Gifted, where we are looking at the gifts that God gives us. If you're saved this morning, say yes.
Yes.
Good.
You didn't say yes, Pastor.
Oh, for sure. I need to make sure. Just looking, just keeping an eye out, right? So if you're saved, the Bible tells us that the Holy Spirit of God lives inside of you. And He has blessed you with a spiritual gift. And He has put in your life a motivation. And when that motivational gift is being utilized in the way it's supposed to be utilized, and its power is being expanded, there is a great ease and there is a great satisfaction with life and ministry. When you are not utilizing your spiritual gift, there will be frustration. There will be times of complication in your life because you're not using the gifts that God has given you. Today, we're going to talk about the spiritual gift of teaching. But before we do, I got this email, and this was so encouraging to me. I just want to read it to you. It says, "Good afternoon, Pastor Matt." That's me. The small group study over the gift of ministry resonated with me today, and I confirmed it as my gift. Kyle was knocking out a cinder block in the wall outside of our unit to prevent the building from flooding when I showed up on shift. He was soaked at the end of 2 hours laboring over that wall. When he was done, my first instinct was, man, he's going to need a dry pair of boots, or the drive home is going to stink. And sure enough, I had an extra pair of boots in the car and a dry towel to give him. It felt great to help him out like that. With being in the Air Force, the Big Blue makes you feel like everything you do has to be orchestrated this, directed this, and coordinating some huge volunteer project with some huge impact. When really, I find the most peace with smaller tasks people can be grateful for. One person receiving a pair of boots won't make my annual report, but it made my day to feel like I did something great. For the longest time, I've ignored acts of service for the church and others because it's not going to win some award or get on to my next point of life, so I thought. I wanted to start exercising my gift, both at home, at work, and at church, so I can live in peace. If we could, and then he talks about let's meet up and he wants to buy me lunch. Always love whenever an email ends that way. To me, that was so satisfying. And the reason it's satisfying is because somebody took the Word of God to their life, and rather than thinking, isn't it easy to think, oh, I've got to get this career, I've got to do this job, I've got to check these boxes. But rather than taking that as the perspective of his life, he by faith said, there's a guy who needs boots and a towel. And it became like the highlight of his week because he was using his spiritual gift. And all of us have a spiritual gift. And when we utilize it, that satisfaction, not frustration, but satisfaction comes when our spiritual gift is being utilized and met out in the purposes that we've established. I challenge you that God has a spiritual gift and a place for you to utilize that spiritual gift. And if you're not, you're missing out on some of the greatest fulfillment of life. He's blessed you. And the spiritual gift is more. Notice he talked about being in the Air Force. And a lot of times in the Air Force, I really appreciated this. Being in the Air Force, you're talking big picture, mission, complete, task, march, jump, do all the things that you're supposed to do. But he said, God uses me to do these small things and these small things. And as God's using me, I felt like, wow, this is right where God wants to use me. Some people miss out on that satisfaction in life because they're not utilizing their gift. And the goal or the intent of this series is to give you the knowledge that you need to utilize the gifts that God has given you. But not just so that you know it, so you can start implementing it. You can work that. So today we're going to talk about the gift of teaching. Verse number 7. Does anyone have Romans chapter 12 and verse number 7? If you got it, say got it. And Val, if you got it, I need someone to read verse number 11 after Val reads verse 7. Does anyone else got verse number 11? All right. Say your name again. This is Liz, and Liz is visiting from New York, correct?
Well, we live in Greece with my husband, but I'm from New York.
So that's why her English is so good. And this is Andrew,
Yes.
and they are from Greece, and they are friends with Zoe, Yazul. Yazul. That is a Greek, that means hello, right? Yes, so Yazul. Everyone say Yazul to our friends.
Yazul.
All right, good. So you're going to read verse 11, right? In English. Okay, good. All right, verse number 7, Val.
Or ministry, let us wait on our ministering, or he that teacheth by teaching.
So verse number 7 is very small. In fact, there's 6 words about teaching. Oh, my gift is 6 words. But the idea with that verse number 6 or verse number 7 is that it's coordinated with with the one previous, ministry. And it says if you have the gift of ministry, then you need to be waiting on the gift of ministry. You need to be looking for a place. If you have the gift of teaching, you need to give a gift. You need to utilize that gift. So just like the person who's waiting, he doesn't sit around and just like, I'm waiting for an opportunity to serve. He's up, he's attentive. Oh, I can engage here. Oh, I can engage here. The teacher, the same thing is being said of the teacher. If you have the gift of teaching, look for a place to engage. Look for a place to be serving. Verse number 11 adds some more context. Dr. Heinzen says, who is one of the directors of theology at Liberty University, says that verse number 11 explores verse number 7 greater. And let's see what verse number 11 says.
Not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord.
So if that verse is adding context to verse number 7, it says that the teacher should not be slothful in business. He should not be passively waiting around, but he should be somebody who is actively engaging the business of teaching. Now, he also says, what is the word that is used there? There's a descriptive word. It is I think it's an adverb, if I would be right. The kind of service is supposed to be what? He's supposed to be what in service? Yeah, verb. Is that an adverb?
No.
Is it an adjective?
Adjective.
It is?
Well,
It's a
Well,
modifying
depending on how you
conjunction
use it.
for the pluperfect. What's that?
yeah.
Good. So it's one of those modifiers. And in those modifiers, it is talking about the way you teach should be done in a fervent fashion. So let's look at the notes. More than peanuts. Last night, whenever I was putting together the outline for this, I was watching, or Luke was watching the Peanuts movie. How many of you seen the Peanuts movie? Okay? I have never seen the Peanuts movie in its entirety. I've seen parts of it, but I usually fall asleep whenever it's on. It's a great movie to put on and just pass out because no filth or bad stuff's going to go on. So you can put it on, the kids are like, and you can pass out. So I've seen the Peanuts movie like probably 4 or 5 times, but never the entire thing in continuity. But I do know about Peanuts. And Snoopy, Charlie Brown, Lucy, Linus, Pigpen, Schroeder, yeah, good. Peppermint Patty, okay, all those guys. Anytime an adult talks in the Peanuts characters or the Peanuts cartoons, all the adults say the exact same thing. Now, I want you to go back with me to Charlie Brown's Christmas special, his Thanksgiving special, his New Year's party, his Easter, Valentine. Man, he's got a lot of things that he's invested in.
He's a fan of holidays.
What's that?
He's a fan of holidays.
He is a fan of holidays. He's very, yeah, I mean, you can't have a holiday without Charlie Brown celebrating something. So anytime an adult, whether it was at Valentine's Day, 4th of July, there was always, the adults in the show always said the exact same thing. Now, how many of you know what they said? All right, good. So many of you know where I'm going with this. So as a class, I want, at the count of 3, I want you to all share with me the things that every adult, whether it was a teacher, somebody on the phone, a parent, what were the things that a teacher said or an adult said in the Charlie Brown movies? Everyone together at the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. Yes. Now I share that with you because some of you think you just walked into a strange cult. You're like, what are they speaking in tongues in here or something like that? No, it's always and all the students would sit there like. God desires for us to be teachers. And if you have the gift of teaching, He wants your gift of teaching to be more than just peanuts. Just throwing stuff out that nobody is collecting, nobody's gathering. He wants us to have more than peanuts. So, number one, teachers must teach. Teachers must teach. There's an urgency inside of the heart of a teacher to educate others. And what's fascinating about the placement of this passage, verse number 7, is that God is integrating speaking gifts with serving gifts. Speaking gifts with serving gifts. Now, you're going to see the difference between the gifts. 2 weeks ago, we talked about the gift of prophecy. The gift of prophecy is somebody who has a desire to speak truth. So the speaking the truth is, let's use Jonah as an example. Jonah had a message as a prophet. The message of the prophet was, yet 40 days and Nineveh will be destroyed. Yet 40 days and Nineveh will be destroyed. He didn't give any context for it. He didn't share reasons why. He didn't appropriate the methodology of how it was going to be destroyed. He just said, as a prophet, 40 days and Nineveh will be destroyed. God did not send a teacher to do the work of a prophet. The teacher does not take time to just blast out truth. He has a method. He is systematic in the way that he arranged it, but the urgency of the prophet is felt by the teacher. The teacher feels the need to communicate truth. And the Lord is integrating this speaking gift into a serving gift. The minister's like, if I never talk to anybody, that's okay, I'm helping out. The teacher must speak. It is on the teacher to find pupils. That's an interesting statement. Because the teacher must find pupils. One of my favorite movies, in fact, one of my top 5 favorite movies, is the movie called Field of Dreams. In the movie Field of Dreams, Kevin Costner's character, he's a farmer, and he's a struggling farmer, and he looks out over his cornfield, and in the night, he hears a voice, and the voice says,
if you build it, they will come.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was, if you build it, and it's not they will come. If you build it, he will come. If you build it. This is the mind of the teacher right there. Yeah, right? If you build it, he will come. And so the story goes, how many of you have seen the movie? The story goes this way. He tears down his cornfield and he builds a baseball stadium out in the middle of his cornfield. And over a series of events, it's a great father-son movie. Spoiler alert. It's a great baseball movie. It's just, I enjoy the story. In fact, when I get to the end of it, most times I'm like, he built it and they came. Sometimes people feel like their spiritual gift or their ministry, it's all been done over here. It needs to come forward and it will end up with John when it eventually gets to him. Some people feel that once they engage ministry, that they're just going to do something and the people will come. The commandment or the urgency to the minister, the teacher, is that you need to have pupils. If you don't have pupils, then you can't be a teacher. It's like the person who says, I'm a leader, and he turns around and nobody's following him. If you're a leader and you turn around and nobody's following you, you're just going for a walk. A teacher needs to have pupils to teach, and so they must actively be recruiting and finding a place to teach. Number 2, not only must teachers teach, but teachers are first students. Teachers are first students. Knowing truth and details matter. If I were to speak, John, you know a lot about soccer, right? Relatively. If I were to talk to you about, I probably could name 5 soccer players, all right? Could you name more than that? You could. All right, so I could name Messi, Ronaldo, Lance Donovan.
Mia Hamm.
What?
Mia Hamm.
Mia Hamm. There was the girl who was the goalie and she got kicked off the team. What's that? Yeah, Han Solo. Yeah, exactly. So my knowledge of soccer is minute compared to John's, right? Now John would say that compared to somebody else, his knowledge is. But if I were to say, John, let me teach you about soccer, John would be, I think, frustrated
with me teaching him about soccer. Why would he be frustrated? Because I don't have an education about that. Now, I like soccer. I played soccer. I have watched some soccer, but I don't know soccer. I'm not a person who's qualified to teach upon it. In order to be a teacher, you must first be a student. There's certain things in here that if you were to speak about them, I would listen, and I would listen for a long time because you're skilled on that. There's other things that if you were to speak on them, I wouldn't listen at all. And the reason is, it's not because I'm disinterested or I'm uncaring, it's just you don't have permission to speak on those things. A teacher is first a student. In 1 Timothy chapter 3, the Bible says that one of the qualifications of a pastor is that they are apt to teach. Now that is two sides of the same coin. Not only is a pastor able to communicate truth, but he has to be willing to listen to truth back as well. Because if I am unteachable, you will never want to hear from me. If you have an opinion or if you share a thought with me and I'm like, you know what, I really don't care, you'll never want to listen from me. Because a person must be apt to teach. A teacher must know truth and they understand that details matter. Anecdotes and stories amuse, but there's very little value for the teacher. They want to concentrate on the facts. In a teacher, one of the characteristics of a teacher is that they want to give out fact, detail, dates, geography, timelines. Oh, teachers love those things. They don't necessarily enjoy the anecdotes or the amusing stories. I have, whenever I was 20 years old, my dog of about 15 years, a little border collie named Lassie, she died. She was my dog. And I had told the story of Lassie's death and her life in about a 6 or 7 minute illustration where from time to time I've talked about how Lassie, when she was a puppy, and I've gone through her entire life. When Lassie died, I was literally petting her head when Lassie died. And then I buried her the next morning out in the middle of the desert. And it's a very sad story. When I've told that story, there have been people that have been crying. As I told it, there was a 60-year-old man that sat in that chair one time, and as I'm telling the story, he's like bawling, wiping away his tears. How? He said, yeah, that was really tough. A teacher can appreciate that, but they don't consider that teaching. In fact, they get frustrated with anecdotes and stories that are amusing, but not moving the story forward. In fact, a teacher might sit in a Sunday school class as a guy's talking about his dog and think, what does a dog have to do with the Bible? Why are you telling me about your dog? Or I tell you about the fact that I went on a roller coaster. A teacher sits there and is like, I don't care about the roller coaster. Just teach me the Bible. Read the verses, say what you got to say so we can go on. That the mind of a teacher is very detailed and fact-oriented, giving you principle. And so anecdotes and stories amuse, but they don't necessarily. The teacher is of the opinion that facts produce results. If you know this, this is going to change. If you really understand, this will change. Fervency is necessary in the heart of a teacher. Verse number 11 says that he is fervent in his spirit. What does that mean? A teacher can very often get to a place where he is just speaking about truth, but he is not fervent about it. Why? Because his whole goal is, let me get through my PowerPoint, let me give you my slides, and once you get the slides in the PowerPoint, you're basically good to go. Without understanding that many times for the listener, there is a need to color the story. So passion needs to accompany facts, but misplaced passion can deter kingdom growth. Can I give you an example? I'm going to use a Greek word. In Romans chapter 1, verse number 16, the Bible says, for I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation, to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. A teacher might look at that and say, oh, the word power. What kind of power is that? Is that a power that comes out from myself? Is that a power that comes upon me? Is that a power that I can work up to? Is that a power that is supernaturally there? What does that power mean? And so the teacher loves research. He loves to find facts, so he might go into the original language. So the English word power comes from the Greek word dunamis. And that Greek word dunamos means explosive power. It's the same word that we get the English word dynamite. And so the teacher can get into just a word like that and say, oh wow, this Greek word, it's dunamos, and it means dynamite, and it's transformative. It's not supposed to be, it's unstable. It can change things in a powerful way. This is an amazing word. And so a teacher, though, can get into a place where there is no fervency about it, because the fervency is about the facts rather than the message. Can I give you an example? Because some of you have listened to times like this, where a teacher will get up and say, Romans 1:16, for I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power. That word power is very interesting. It comes from the Greek word dunamos. It's in the aorist tense in the pluperfect. The pluperfect is very rarely used in the New Testament, so it grabs our attention. It's in the aorist tense, and as an aorist tense, it means that it has a beginning point with a, they wouldn't even do a gesture. It has a beginning point with continuing ramifications into the future and forward, so that it is not something that is an event. It is an event that has a continuing change. It is transformative. I'm fascinated by this because we even find out that the word dunamos can be translated dynamite. It's a fascinating thing. When we understand that dynamite, the explosive power of the gospel, it'll change our life. And we as listeners can sit and listen to all the facts and hear. Yeah, exactly. See, you guys are with me on that. So the whole point is that a teacher can get consumed with, oh, I'm telling you this fact, I'm telling you this fact. Oh, I found this thing back here, I found this article, oh, it's so fascinating. And they get so deep into something that they've lost, we really don't care. What does Romans 1:16 say? Oh, I found this article, H.A. Ironside, back in 1913. Nobody cares. What does it mean? So that misplaced passion, trying to find out the details and blowing this thing up, can deter kingdom growth. Truth with passion is vital. So I want to talk to you about a character in the Bible whose name is Luke. So everyone open up your Bibles to Luke chapter 1, from verses 1 through 4. Luke is a teacher of the Word of God. The point is that he is more than a physician. His job was to be a doctor. He made his living, his well-being as a medical doctor in the sense that we would speak of today. But it appears that he had this beautiful gift of this beautiful motivational gift as a teacher in the Scripture. And he typifies, according to Charles Stanley, many of the characteristics of a teacher in Luke chapter 1, verse number 1 through 4. Let's read those together. Luke chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. Who's got it? Somebody's got verse 1. Abby, would you read verse number 1? And then I'll stop you and we'll go to verse number 2. But next, go ahead.
For as much as many have taken in hand to set forth in order a declaration of those things which are mostly believed among us.
Now notice what's happening with Luke chapter 1, verse number 1. Luke, he's more than a physician, he is now a teacher. And he has a desire, notice what he says, to set in order. I want you guys, now, as far as I know, there were already 2 Gospels. Give or take, they were written around the same time, but God was doing a work. There's the Gospel of Mark. Mark is a very hastily written one. Every time you read the book of Mark, it's like, and suddenly, and forthwith, and suddenly, and it's just moving right along. It's the shortest of the Gospels, and it tells the entire story of Jesus Christ in about 16 chapters. The book of Matthew, written by the best-looking apostle, is more of a treatise that explains the beauty and glory and kingship and Jewishness of Jesus. But Luke, not satisfied with what else was there, he says, I'm going to tell you how it really happened. And he even uses, as Abby read a few moments ago, the phrase, I'm going to set in order. Luke, demonstrating the heart or the motivational gift of a teacher, had desire to set things in order. He wants to make sure that the truth is palatable. The book of Matthew is written to a very Jewish audience. And in that Jewishness of the context, some of the things could be lost on all these Gentiles who are getting saved. So maybe that's part of his motivation, but he wants to make the truth palatable. I want you to understand this. He is systematic in the communication. Have you ever talked to somebody who is schizophrenic in their conversation? Like, hey, did you see the Knights game last night? Oh yeah, I sure did. I mean, it was pretty cool. They won 5-1. I like cupcakes. And their conversation is just like, whoa, yeah, I like cupcakes too. Do you like cupcakes with sprinkles? I never get any sprinkles. Why? Because sprinkles are for winners. But I would like someday to be able to get. And their conversation is just, woo! And then Ford Escorts. What are you talking about, Ford Escorts? I used to have one. You know, their conversation is just all over the place. A teacher says, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's very systematic in their approach to teaching. They want you to know this is this, and because of this, it does this. And because of this, it does this. They're systematic in their communication. Verse number 2. Who's got verse number 2? Mary, would you read that, please?
Even as they delivered them unto us, which from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word.
Now notice this. There is accuracy, and accuracy matters. You cannot be fluid with the truth. Credentials facilitate validation. Credentials facilitate validation. What is the credentials that he gives out there, Mary, that says that he's able to speak about it? Anyway, look at verse number 2. I was an eyewitness. Very good. I was an eyewitness. I'm not just somebody like, somebody told me, my mom told me, my dad said, I heard from my cousin, Lolo over there. No. Let me tell you about the things that I saw. I'm going to speak some truth into your life, and this stuff is stuff I saw. Credentials facilitate validation. This is so great. A teacher has a desire to make sure things are in order. And number 2, he wants them to be accurate. He wants them to be accurate. If there is an error, if there's a typo, it kind of like, Look at verse number 3. Who will read verse number 3 for me? Go ahead, Sean.
It seemed good to me also, having had perfect understanding of all things, from the very first to write unto thee in order of most excellent enterprise.
And then verse number 4. Sarah.
That thou mayest know the certainty of those things wherein thou hast been instructed.
Isn't that interesting? I want you to know the certainty of those things that thou hast been instructed. Sometimes we learn things, and then we come to a later realization in our life that somebody was lying to us. When I was 16 years old, my friend Chris Cope, who was 18, a man of the world, very cosmopolitan. Did you know Chris Cope? You would have been around at the same time. So Chris Cope, Chris got his license when he was 16, and he was so cool because he had a little Mazda compact hatchback car, and we could drive in his car. So I was about 14, 15, and I was riding with Chris in his car down to some store to fetch an errand for my dad. And Chris said to me, who'd been driving for a couple of months now, Chris said to me, do you know that if you drive the speed limit, you will never hit a red light? I said, really? He said, yeah, it's true. I do my best to drive right at the speed limit. Now, if you go below or above, you're going to miss it. I mean, think about that for a second. Like, that would mess up everything. So you've got to be constantly going 45 and never stop, or 35 or whatever the speed limit is. And I said, no, I didn't know that. I got in the car with my dad, and I was driving with my permit, and I believed this for about a year. That if you drive the speed limit, you never hit a red light. So I'm driving, I had my permit, and my dad says, you need to slow down. I said, no, Dad, I'm going 45. No, you need to slow down. I said, no, I don't want to miss the red light. I don't want to miss the green light. He said, what are you talking about? I said, if you go the speed limit. And I said this with so much authority. If you go the speed limit, you will never hit a red light. He said, who told you that? Chris Cope. This couple has no idea what he's talking about. Slow down. I thought for certain the dude was right because he had been driving for about 1.5 years longer than I had. Some of you come to that place in your realization where things that you were told were true were not true. Can I just say a few words? Santa Claus?
Pastor Matt.
Yeah.
That kind of worked for me, the whole green light. Although the saying is, if you drive the speed limit, your chances are higher that you're gonna hit green lights. Now you do hit some red lights, but your chances are actually high, and I can testify to that. And I heard it from the news, Channel 8.
Thanks. So one of the things we may be discovering in here is that Kenny might have the heart of a teacher.
I can testify to it.
See him throwing out his credentials there? What was the other credential? Channel 8. Channel 8. Okay? So, and I'm telling you this, and I'm being very jovial with this, but the fact that he wants to say that demonstrates in his heart that he has the heart of a teacher. Now, he could be completely wrong. Which he may or may not be. I don't have the credentials on that. But that very demonstration is a demonstration that there's some of the gift of teaching inside of Kenny's life. So when you find out something is not true, or when you find out that there may be an error with it, for the heart of a teacher, he wants to find truth. Truth is so important. Are you telling me? Are you telling me? I've always believed that, whether it was Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, or that Kermit the Frog was a puppet. He's not a real frog that's in love with a pig. No. Because for the teacher, traditions and beliefs are not sufficient. For the teacher, just because we've always done this doesn't mean we should always do it. It's very good to have a teacher in your life who will challenge the status quo. Are you really going to eat that? Yes. Do you know what was Brett Bork's wife's name? Do you remember? I forget her name. Anyways, Brooke. Yeah, Brooke. So when we were first married, we were about 40 years into our marriage. We went camping with this family named the Bork family, and he just made major in the Air Force, and we were working here. We had kids that were about the same age, and we went camping at Zion. And I went to the gas station, I bought junk food, and we were playing Monopoly or something outside, and I opened up a Twinkie. And I love Twinkies. I even like Zingers more than Twinkies, but I opened up a Twinkie and I was eating the Twinkie, and Brooke looked at me and said, "Do you know how many preservatives are in those?" I didn't even know what a preservative was. I'm like, "That's good, I don't want it to rot." She said, "That's probably been on the shelf for like 18 months. And I never looked at a Twinkie again the same way. Because every time, doesn't mean I stopped eating them, but I never looked at it the same way because she had the ability to make me think in a very teaching way. That was sitting on a shelf someplace for 18 months. That was 12 years ago that I heard that, right? And a teacher can take a fact and poignantly put it into you at the time, and you're not offended, you're not necessarily antagonized by it, like, I never knew that. Just because you've always done something doesn't mean you should always do it. Number 3, a teacher delights in research and reporting. There you are, Kenny. Channel 8 said so. Let me tell you what Channel 8 said. The guy who always knows the news, always knows the weather, and likes to tell you the weather, maybe has the heart of a teacher. Luke's gospel includes details that we would never know about Mary. She pondered all these things in her heart. Things we have never known about Joseph. There's so many details that are given into the life of Zechariah, Ananias. All these different guys are detailed, opened up, credentialing the story of Luke and his gospel. If it weren't for Luke and his storytelling ability, we would not know, or about the Acts of the Apostles. When you read through the book of Acts, it was Luke that set those things in order. He's the one that tells us about the shipwrecks. He's the one that tells us about cloven tongues of fire. He's the one that tells us about the missionary journeys of Paul and Barnabas and Silas, and letting us know that great work went through even with John Mark. It was Luke and his teaching that put that stuff out there. Now this is what's very interesting. Most of us, when we would start to list the most important figures of the New Testament, would start with either Paul or would start with Peter. And Peter, I would say, maybe number one. Of course, I would always put Jesus number one, Sean, because I love the Lord. But we would put like Paul, Peter. Notice Peter's writings are very small in the New Testament. 8 chapters are contributed throughout the entire New Testament of Peter, that prophet. Because Peter was not necessarily a teacher. Peter was more of a, thus saith the Lord. Thus saith the Lord. I'm going to get up on Acts chapter 2, and I'm going to tell you that Jesus Christ is the one that you were talking about all this time. It wasn't that he was ignorant, but it seems that Peter did not enjoy sitting down and let's talk these things through. But Luke, who might not might not be in the top 10. Luke contributes about 50 chapters of the Bible to the New Testament. He has 2 large volumes as a teacher because he invested his life. But Luke never walked on water. That's one of the characteristics of a teacher. They display an acute interest in acquiring knowledge, which is one of the prerequisites of wisdom, and their intent on understanding from the listener. The teacher wants to get some feedback when he's utilizing his spiritual gift. He wants to get feedback that he's with him. Does that make sense? You see, that's something a teacher might say. Sometimes a teacher might say, amen? And when he gets laughs, he's wondering, do they even know what I'm talking about? A teacher, when he's running his race well, he's looking for, oh, this is communicating, they're resonating. He's watching the body language of people. Now, here's where a teacher can get in danger. More than problematic. When he becomes more concerned with facts than the engagement of the audience. Some of you have been in classes where people are more concerned with getting through the PowerPoint than understanding the content. Were you ever in a class like that, Dominic? Where it's like, here's the notes, and they give you a study sheet. And you're like, I want to know what you're talking about. Here's the study sheet. PowerPoint. Look at this. Okay, understand this. Memorize this fact. You need to know everything from chapter 9 to the end of the book. And that will all be on the test. I'm like, the teacher can become so concerned with the facts that they lose the engagement of the audience, because a teacher can focus on, I just got to get the facts, 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 got to get the facts. Number 2, teachers are reticent to adopt new methods. Now think about this for a second. Why would a teacher balk at adopting a new method?
Because it works.
What's that?
Because it's worked for them.
Something that they've done, they have tested, they've evaluated, and it works. Why else? Why else? I mean, that's a good explanation there. A teacher who says, yeah, I've always used the flannel graphs. I've always used the flashcards. I always use a PowerPoint, or I always use this. They find a method that works, and they can become reticent to adopting a new method. Why? Because somebody comes in and like, hey, we do this, and this really works. We decided that we would teach all of our classes in the dark. And I'm just telling you, everyone should teach their classes in the dark, because teaching classes in the dark is transformative. And a teacher sits back and says, that's weird. Are you like in Alaska on December 21st? Is this why we do these types of things? Or is there a reason why we are teaching in the dark? So they hesitate until they see learning goes up 9.3% when the lights are off. Ooh. The teacher says, it's been validated. There's a Harvard Business School study that says most CEOs learn in the dark. Ooh. And they start to see, okay, now I'll do it, but they're going to be slow to change. If you work for somebody who has the heart of a teacher, they're going to be slow to change. How do you convince them? You need to show them facts. You need to show them data. You need to give them information that shows this is the way you're going to make it. Because until they see credentials, until somebody that they trust validates that change, they're not going to change. Okay? Letter A. Their researched way has been successful. Methods are not the creation of understanding in the teacher's eyes. So a teacher does not get happy just because somebody is, okay, now that I have your attention, that guy's like, don't ever again. That is not teaching. Whereas sometimes you'll see shows or you'll talk about things and you'll see things where it's like, oh, these people, they went outside and learned. And they're like, just because you went outside doesn't mean that you were teaching. These people, they brought in animals so that there could be hands-on. That is not teaching. Teaching is when these facts are understood and they are able to be applied to their life. That's teaching. And they can be frustrated with adopting new methods. See where we're going? These are some of the dangers of a teacher that you should just be careful of. They lack grace to oversee minutia. They lack grace to oversee minutia. Whenever there is an error, they allow that small error to become, whoa. They're the ones that whenever you type something on Facebook and said, oh, I went over there, T-H-E-I-R, they're like, And they feel it necessary to grammar Nazi you. Let me show you. So let me show you that over there is not T-H-E-I-R, and it is not T-H-E-Y''R-E. Over there is T-H-E-R-E. Please get it right in your next Instagram post. They're the ones that whenever they go into the bulletin or the class notes and they see some grammar, they're like, spell it right. Why do I even come to class? Spell it right. Some people can be so meticulous about it that the fact that the notes are not aligned properly, it's frustrating them. Like,
Or not big enough for people to use.
use the tab button! And a teacher, that's one of the things. Now, it's okay because they focus on those details because those details are important to build a larger case. But one of the struggles that a teacher has is that they lack the grace to oversee minutia in error. They allow that small error to be like, oh, I'm blowing them up over this. I'm out! And they allow something so small to ruin something that could be profoundly good. Okay? They allow the facts and the data to override faith. This is a great struggle for the teacher. They allow the facts and the data to override faith. In fact, when the teacher sees that statement right now, they're just kind of like, how could the facts and data ever override faith? What are you talking about? Facts and data coincide with faith. Can I give you an example? Peter on water. The facts and the data say Peter never walks on water. The human condition is not such that in a composite of the H2O molecular structure, walking or being in a buoyant state on top of that would facilitate good walk. Peter was not a teacher. Peter was not a teacher. Peter was a prophet who's like, is that you, Lord? Yep. If it's you, tell me to come. Come. All right. The teachers in the boat sat back and they were like, and they're trying to figure out how that's going to happen, and here's Peter already drowning in the drink. Because a teacher is consumed. He finds great validation in that. Can I give you a second one? And this is very important because a teacher can get into problems when they allow the facts and data to override faith. You never knock down walls by walking around them. You never do that. No great city has ever been destroyed by taking a walk around it. So the teacher can sit back and say, this isn't going to work. And sometimes you have to step out by faith. Now, on the contrary, can people make a whole lot of foolishness and call it faith? Yes or no? Yeah. People can say, well, I was just stepping out by faith. You idiot. Why? Because they were not being altruistic to what faith is. But in the larger sense, Peter walking on water. Dave Ramsey. I'm a person who thinks Dave Ramsey has very many good principles to teach. But there's the heart of a teacher can get to a place where they say, all right, this is the way, and God burdens them at Christmas time. They have their budget, they have their baby steps to all start in line, and God burdens them to say, give $20 to an offering. And by their system, by their tools set in place, they're like, I can't. Dave Ramsey said no. And the Holy Spirit said to him, give $20. Give $20. Do you see where the teacher can fall into a trap is by allowing the facts and data to override faith. There's nothing wrong with facts and data. And living by budgets, that's so good, it's so good, it's so good. But there is always that volatile action of faith. Sometimes we're just like, okay, I'm going to move here because this is what is right to do. Number 5, they get caught in the weeds and forget the big picture. I had a teacher, his name was Dr. Barnhart. For a week and a half, we studied the phrase, the love of Christ constrained me. And I think it's in 1 Corinthians, if I remember right, the love of Christ constrained me. The teacher is right now saying, is that in 1 Corinthians? And they're Googling, for the love of Christ constrained me. So we went for a whole week in trying to figure out, is it the love of Christ, like Christ's love for us, or my love, the love of Christ that constrains me? And he was such a teacher that he was getting down into the weeds and the weeds and the weeds and the aorist pluperfect sense, that the grammar and the preceding pronouns, and I think that's important, and there's good stuff to that kind of things, but the teacher can get lost in the weeds that they forget this is what it's about. They can get so consumed with the data, that they never engage the people. They rely on beliefs and convictions and will not capitulate to godly wisdom. But they'd say, this is my experience, this is how I was raised, this is the way I was taught. And so the heart of the teacher can sometimes say, these are my beliefs, these are my convictions, and I really don't care what you say. This is my personal experience. And so it can put them in a problem. If you got your Bibles, let's close with this, because I want you to see how a false teacher can come in and steal affection, and then our time will be done. In 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 1 through 3, the Bible says, but there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privily or privately shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that bought them, and bring them upon themselves swift destruction. And many shall follow their pernicious ways, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be evil spoken of. And through covetousness shall they with feigned words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now of a long time lingereth not, and their damnation slumbereth not. The Bible tells us here to be cautious of false teachers. And what does a false teacher do? He comes in and he makes you deny the Lord that saved you. He puts into your heart a plant or a seed of doubt that which God hath done in your life, or that which God has resonated in your life, is somehow corrupt. And it follows the pattern of the serpent. Do you remember the serpent said to Eve, hath God said? Hath God said? Hath God said? And it puts into this mind, like he doesn't want you to be like him. That's why he says don't eat of the fruit. The Bible teaches us that there are false teachers around. You could look at this passage in a little bit greater depth. But they follow the pattern of the serpent, putting into doubt the godly things that God has blessed us with. For the teacher, God desires for the teacher to teach. And teaching can come in a number of different methods. In Exodus chapter 38, God talks about a man who is full of wisdom and who's a carpenter, who taught others, obviously. He talks about people who took care of dye and wool Talks about wisdom, who are wise, women who have wisdom in their craft. See, you don't necessarily just have to teach this, but you should be teaching. And where God has instructed you, you should be utilizing that gift. Where you have learned of God, you should be utilizing that gift. And when a teacher is teaching, when he's taking that knowledge and systematically helping somebody to grow and learn and become what God's called them to become, there's so much satisfaction. There's so much satisfaction. Going through a discipleship course with a teacher will change your life. Going through a study, oh, that makes sense. A teacher should teach. And if God's called you to be a teacher, beware some of the problems, but relish in the bounty of what God's given you in your gift and help others to advance his kingdom.